This is an NBC News special report. Here's Savannah Guthrie.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. As we come on the air, the president has just arrived at Buckingham Palace in London for his first official state visit to Great Britain. This is the first stop as he greets the royal family there. And this is going to be a very busy week. It will also take him across the channel to Normandy, France on Thursday for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. It's just afternoon in London. The president landed in the UK a few hours ago, a 7.5-hour flight from Washington. He will be received this morning by Queen Elizabeth. All the pomp and ceremony of a state visit. You can see them in the Buckingham Palace garden and be greeted this morning by the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, and the Duchess of Cornwall walking with Melania Trump. We're seeing some of the ceremony, the royal gun salute that is expected for an event like this. And as they walk the stairs, they will in a moment be greeted by Queen Elizabeth herself. Our correspondents are lined up. Let's go to Keir Simmons. He's at Kennedy Gate, one of the palace's entrances. And there we have the big moment with the Queen. Keir, what's the mood there as the president comes for his first official state visit? I believe we're waiting for Keir Simmons as we see this greeting between the president and the Queen, Melania Trump, Prince Charles, the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla. We've got Hallie Jackson, who has been traveling with the president, and already before he got here, he's making a lot of headlines. Hallie.
He sure is, Savannah. As you can see, the royal family there walking in with President Trump and the First Lady. As the president was essentially on his way over just before, he did an interview, several of them, in which he took aim not just at some members of the royal family, but at Prime Minister Theresa May herself. So let's talk about the royal piece of this. President Trump, as you see him walking in with Prince Charles there, they will take tea later on, is prepared for the possibility of climate change to come up. This is something that is near and dear to Prince Charles's heart. This is an issue on which he and the president do not see eye to eye. So watch for that to be a potential tension point. That said, President Trump is a fan of the Queen's. He has spoken very complimentary of her before. He has enjoyed his previous visits. This is his first official state visit, which means the Queen is formally hosting the Trump family. But he has been to the UK for a working visit in the past and has met the Queen previously. There was a minor dust-up over a potential protocol breach when President Trump appeared to walk in front of the Queen, although you can bet that his advance team has warned him not to make that same mistake again. So far, we've seen no breaches of protocol from the president or the First Lady that I can tell, at least. Keep in mind, though, that somebody who will not be here, Meghan Markle, of course, she is home with her young infant son, Archie. She and Prince Harry, of course, just had a baby. President Trump was asked in an interview about the comments that Markle made prior to his becoming elected president back in 2016, in which she called him misogynistic. President Trump called those comments nasty, said he hadn't heard about them before, but said he hopes that she's doing well, said he hopes that she will make a great American princess, essentially, as she has, of course, married into that royal family. So there are some interesting points to watch here on the royal side as President Trump gets ready for a day, a real pomp and pageantry. This is what he likes best. Keep in mind the centerpiece of today's visit will be a state banquet later on tonight at Buckingham Palace. A lot of eyes on that before a dinner and other events with the Prime Minister tomorrow, Savannah.
All right, Hallie, stand by there. As you mentioned, we await some of the formal welcomes that are about to happen at Buckingham Palace. The president having just walked inside, greeted by the Queen, greeted by Prince Charles and Camilla. Let's go to Keir Simmons. I think we have him now. He's just outside Buckingham Palace at the Canada Gate. And Keir, you're a local, as they say. How is this visit being received?
Hey, Savannah. Well, there were cheers outside Buckingham Palace here as Marine One elegantly swooped down behind Buckingham Palace there. Behind me, you can see the royal standard flying over the palace that tells us, of course, if we needed telling, that the Queen is in residence. It's not just the Queen, as Hallie was saying, though, but an entourage of the royal family who will meet the president. These state visits are all about the royal family. They are the centerpiece of this. This is a diplomatic dance that will be done in the coming days. First, though, we are waiting for the president to inspect the Grenadier Guards, who are at the back of Buckingham Palace there. Some changes to this state visit. Normally that inspection would take place at the front of the palace. It's happening at the back, perhaps for security reasons. Another example in the past, leaders have ridden through the Mall over to my right in an open-top carriage. And no American president has done that, again, perhaps for security reasons. As we know, President W. Bush, President Obama, both were afforded a state visit like this. Neither of them chose to ride through the Mall in that way. And of course, President Trump will not be staying here at Buckingham Palace because of renovation work. $500 million worth of renovation work, Savannah. The president may want to inspect that and give his views. But through the day, we will see him have an informal lunch, including with Prince Harry, which will be an interesting interaction given those press reports of the comments from the president about Meghan. Then he will go to Westminster Abbey, scene of so many famous events here in London, of course, not least at the wedding of Charles and Diana all those decades ago. There he will lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown warrior, that to mark the First World War. Then there will be an afternoon tea with Charles and Camilla. Again, as Hallie was saying, that will be an interesting interaction, given the fact that Charles and President Trump are around the same age, but we know hold very different views. Prince Charles believes that climate change is a real threat. He believes in organic food. Those conversations may come up, but the British royal family, in the end, are professional diplomats. And Savannah, this trip is all about the diplomacy, all about Britain putting its best foot forward as America's closest ally. In the background there, Savannah, you can hear the 82-gun salute for the president's arrival, more than the normal 41-gun salute, because it is for the Queen's coronation and for this state visit, as the president might like to say, a huge gun salute. Savannah?
Yeah, we hear them right there at the Royal Park, continuing on this morning here as you speak. The president, of course, is coming to London at a time of internal turmoil there with the Prime Minister, Theresa May. I believe this is her last week in office. She was forced to step down over Brexit, and we see him in some of the interviews he did in the lead up to this visit, dabbling a bit in British politics.
Savannah.
Some eyebrows, but to be honest, that is that's not unexpected. No one here expected that President Trump would arrive and not engage in politics. And of course, although this state visit is very much about the British royal family, he will meet with the Prime Minister, Theresa May, tomorrow. There will be political events. There are reports, Savannah, of some back and forth between Downing Street and the president's entourage over whether President Trump will meet with Nigel Farage, who is famously the politician who led the Brexit campaign and continues to lead that campaign. So, as you rightly suggest, Savannah, this is a time of political turmoil here in the UK, a very, very difficult time, but I suppose you could say, in a sense, that's what the British royal family are for. They stand above the politics. They are the constitutional monarchy, and the hope will be, and I suspect this will be the case, even if there are some faux pas as we go along, the hope will be that ultimately this will be seen as a successful trip.
And Keir, as the images now show, the president's adult children are here. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, both senior advisors to the president as well. Other members of the Trump family are there, and we're starting to see some of that royal rollout you've been telling us about, as we see all the trappings of a ceremonial state visit, and some of the members of the family gathered there on the balcony to witness it. Hallie, what would you say is the president's goal here? I mean, obviously, it's often spoken about the U.S.'s special relationship with Britain. What's the state of that relationship right now? I know the president's been talking about getting a trade deal with the U.K.
That's right. And both the president and Prime Minister May have talked about what a close and important bond that both of these countries have. As Savannah, we look at that balcony shot, not just Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, but Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is here as well. I mention this because you asked, what does the president want to get out of this? He actually may deliver a fairly stern message to Prime Minister May over the Chinese telecom company Huawei. This has been a sticking point between these two nations, both on the national security perspective and from the diplomatic perspective as well. The U.S. wants the U.K. to do less business with this Chinese company, with Huawei, and that is going to be a message that President Trump has said he will deliver to Theresa May. More broadly, when you talk about trade, there are real question marks. Both you and Keir have talked about this remarkable moment of extraordinary political chaos in the UK. At the end of this week, Theresa May will no longer be the leader of the Tories, essentially, here in the UK. She will remain on as prime minister, truly in name only, until a new prime minister is elected, but it's much more of a caretaker role. So she, in essence, after Friday, loses all the power and the authority that she has had. And one of her last acts in office will be this meeting with President Trump, this series of events with him this week, which does, I think, put a pin on the fact that this is such a critical time for the president to be here. He wants a bilateral trade deal between the U.S. and the U.K., but until the U.K. can work out its own deal going on with the EU as it works to get out of Brexit, there will be real question marks about whether and when President Trump will be able to get that done. It is more likely that he will have to hold off until the UK hits that October 31st deadline to either make a deal with the EU for Brexit or else to get out with no deal, which experts predict could be catastrophic economically for this country. Savannah.
Let me flip over to Keir, who obviously has got his eyes on the local politics there. How is this notion of a state visit being received over there? I know he's been to London before as president, but this is the first time he's been given the honor of a state visit, which, of course, on the left of our screens there, we can see what that means at Buckingham Palace right now, all the royal guard assembled and all of its finery, and we're going to really see what that means. What does it mean, not just in terms of what we see in the ceremony, but in terms of the relationship and the signal that it sends, Keir?
Well, you know, Savannah, that's such a tough question to answer, and I guess I would answer it like this. This country, the UK, is as polarized as the US politically right now. So as you can imagine, it's actually very difficult to honestly summarize the feeling in the country. There are certainly many British people who were opposed to this visit. There are also many British people who believe that it is a good idea. After all, in the end, the UK sits in this unique position as an island in the Atlantic, off of Europe, but very much looking towards America with all of the history between the two countries. Whether a trade deal can be done between Britain and the US, I mean, that depends on so many factors, not least of which is the negotiations continuing between Britain and Europe, because Europe's deal with Britain as part of the European Union makes it impossible for an independent trade deal to be done. And it may be that a deal in the future with Europe doesn't make that possible either. So many question marks. I think in terms of the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and that argument, that public argument that President Trump has been drawn into. Sadiq Khan is a politician. He will know that there are many voters in London who do not like President Trump. And so politically, from his point of view, it's advantageous to get into an argument with the president of that nature. And perhaps President Trump thinks it is politically advantageous for him too. Who knows? But crucially, as we watch these pictures of the pomp and ceremony outside of Buckingham Palace, the idea will be to try to rise above all that and be able to say in decades to come, the UK to be able to say in decades to come, that even amongst all of this political turmoil, Britain stood with America, was prepared, was very open to the US president coming and being given all of the airs and graces of a visit to the UK, a state visit to the UK, just as previous presidents have been offered. So it is very much a diplomatic event, this. It is very much about saying, no matter what the particular issues of our time, in the long term, Britain and the UK stand, America and the UK stand together.
And we are, of course, keeping our eye on the garden of Buckingham Palace, where a welcoming ceremony is about to take place. Inside, the president is meeting with the Queen. We also, of course, saw the welcome at the helicopter as it touched down at Buckingham Palace between Prince Charles and Camilla, who greeted the president and the First Lady. And we see on the balcony people who are getting a good view of the events today: Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner. We saw the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin. And Hallie, as I go to you, you'll be traveling with the president all week long. This is the first stop, a couple of days in London, but then solemn duty as we honor the anniversary of Normandy, D-Day, 75 years, and the president plans to travel to France for that.
And he will be surrounded by leaders in Europe, Theresa May, French President Emmanuel Macron, as we listen to the national anthem.
Feeling lucky?
Right in the back. Is that the same for everybody? I don't know. Good. Yeah, brilliant.
I can't see because the flag. Can you? Is the flag rocking you or not?
at Buckingham Palace, just the beginning of a state visit taking place today in the United Kingdom. Our longtime friend across the pond, and the president walking up the steps with Prince Charles to greet the Queen once again. They're expected to have a private lunch. Later, they'll visit Westminster Abbey and the Tomb of the Unknown, and a ceremonial banquet this evening, the beginning of a several days long journey to London, to the UK, and to Europe to honor the 75th anniversary of D-Day. We'll